News Magazine 2020 with Hugh Downs and Barbara Walters.
Tonight, have you heard about Ramtha? He claims to be a spirit speaking through this woman.
Who needs to be worshipped? Indeed, you do.
I was obsessed. I couldn't stop.
When Ramtha speaks, there is such love.
Faithful include Hollywood stars. Some claim it's mass hypnosis. The woman has amassed a fortune.
People are entitled to say that I'm a fake, I'm a fraud, I'm a devil, I'm the Antichrist.
From the Pacific Northwest, Judd Rose reports on new revelations about this woman. Why are thousands drawn to the voice from beyond?
And come visit The Far Side, one of the hottest comic strips of the 80s. It has offbeat humor.
A male spirit, 35,000 years old, who claims to be divine. A growing number of his followers have made her very wealthy. Who are they really following? An immortal wise man? A fake? Or, as some believe, is this the Antichrist, whose presence among us means we're on the eve of Armageddon?
Well, what she definitely is part of what's being called the New Age movement. That's a label for the surge of interest in everything from reincarnation to psychic healing to human potential groups and things of the occult. Ramtha is one of the biggest stars of the New Age movement. She's enthralled a lot of people. Others are outraged. And that's why we asked ABC News correspondent Judd Rose to investigate.
South of Seattle, in the misty farmland of Yelm, Washington, JZ Knight is enjoying her little slice of heaven.
Aren't you beautiful? Look at you.
JZ likes to pamper her Arabian horses. They trot around a 50-acre pasture and come back to a stable nicer than most homes. Most, but not all. Past the stable and the Rolls-Royce, JZ is building a huge mansion, the biggest ever in these parts. No doubt about it, this is some house. When it's finished, it'll have 6 fireplaces, 9 bathrooms, a sauna, a spa, and a pool. Of course, this is an expensive lifestyle to maintain, so every couple of weeks, JZ leaves here and goes off to work. Hers is a job that requires body and soul.
I'd like to tell you I'm very happy that you're here. We're very happy to be here.
She greets an audience like this one in Denver, and then she leaves, changes her hair and her clothes, comes back, and goes into a trance. And finally, after several minutes, this 40-year-old woman says she has turned into a 35,000-year-old man.
Indeed.
The voice seems different, the face seems different. Supposedly she is now a he, Ramtha, or the Ram, as his followers call him. Now the story goes that Ramtha lived in the lost land of Atlantis, where he was a great warrior.
And I was the biggest bastard of them all. For I was the great conqueror, the Ram, that meant the god. And I slaughtered and hacked because I was a barbarian that was filled with anger and ignorance.
But the legend goes on to say that the Ram finally rejected violence for virtue and became a wise, enlightened teacher. Well, if you believe all that, you'll believe JZ Knight when she says that Ramtha decided to come back 35,000 years later in 1977.
I thought I was seeing things because I had tears in my eyes, and I wiped the tears away, and here stood this entity at 2:30 in the afternoon in my kitchen, and I wasn't afraid. I was just shocked. This doesn't happen.
It does if you're what JZ says she is, a channel. They used to call them mediums. Channels say they can summon forth long-dead spirits from other dimensions. Channeling is a phenomenon of the 80s. There are hundreds of them, but the most popular is JZ Knight, who says that on command she can make Ramtha appear. What happens to JZ Knight when Ramtha's speaking?
I actually abdicate my body, and it's like dying, because I do go through a tunnel, and I go through another, I'm going to a light, and the moment I hit that light, I come back.
And JZ claims that while she's gone, she's unaware of what Ramtha's doing. And what he or she is usually doing is preaching for hours on end.
I have come to teach you to wake up from the intimidation back into the sweetness of what is you.
If you find that message confusing and the whole idea of Ramtha preposterous, meet some people who beg to differ.
When JZ Knight comes out and she is Ramtha, it's no longer JZ Knight for me. When Ramtha speaks, There is such love in his voice, and you can see the love coming out of JZ's eyes.
And there is love in their eyes in return. They are transfixed. What transfixes them is a blend of Eastern mysticism and Western pop philosophy with a large dose of theatrics. The medium has a message. God exists in everyone. Man is divine and the master of his own destiny.
Who needs to be worshipped? Indeed, you do. And who needs to save your hide? You do. And indeed, who can answer your prayers? You do.
That may not sound especially profound, but true believers flock to hear it at $400 apiece. It's $1,500 for weekend retreats. There are often so many people, the Ramtha organization can earn up to $200,000 for a single appearance. And if you can't come to Ramtha, Ramtha will come to you.
And you're my first 35,000-year-old guest.
And what is 35,000 years old?
Promotion like this has boosted the Ramtha mailing list to over 23,000 names, and it's growing by more than 100 a week. There's a popular line of video and audio tapes. But what really focused national attention on Ramtha is Shirley MacLaine. MacLaine's latest film chronicles her belief in mysticism. So do her books. One of the actress's bestsellers identifies Ramtha as her spiritual guide, and the actress still keeps a horse at JZ's ranch. MacLaine refused to talk to 2020 about JZ Knight, but she's only one of many celebrities who've been involved with Ramtha. They include Philip Michael Thomas, Mike Farrell, Richard Chamberlain, and Dynasty's Linda Evans, who told 2020, "My experience with Ramtha has been profound."
Ramtha is an enlightened master, like Christ was, like the Buddha was, like Muhammad. They're enlightened masters, and thank goodness we've had them on the planet.
We met Athena Pattengill at her home in Santa Fe, New Mexico. She let us sit in on one of the frequent screenings of Ramtha videos she hosts for local believers. So did actress and photographer Christy Jenkins, who has Ramtha screenings at her Hollywood home.
I saw the tapes and I went, wow, I have to share this. So I called my friends and said, I saw a great thing. Come over and see it.
The people we saw here and in Santa Fe were typical of Ramtha followers. Affluent, educated, successful. What do they see in all of this? Well, we went to the University of Denver and put that question to a man who studied the channeling phenomenon. Dr. Carl Raschke says those believers seem to have it all, but still, something's missing.
And so what they need is something that's mysterious, something that's not obvious, something that they can call all their own. When they hear Ramtha, it's not really what Ramtha is saying, because Ramtha doesn't provide a real hard, complicated message. He is simply saying you are the God within you. And that sounds good. That sounds cool.
Raschke calls the Ramtha movement a sort of collective mass hypnosis, and certainly this woman would agree. Linda lives with her family in Colorado, and it was here in the fall of 1984 that she started listening to Ramtha audio tapes. Now, she never actually saw Knight on video or in person, but soon she was hooked.
Those tapes put me under hypnosis and put me through a personality change that no one would have ever guessed or can imagine can happen to someone.
By May of '85, she was listening to the tapes constantly. She says her nerves were shot, her job was in jeopardy, her marriage was crumbling. Still, she defied her husband and went to a Ramtha retreat in California.
I was obsessed. I couldn't stop. I don't know how to explain it, except that when I tell you that I was on a roll and you're going downhill, you can't stop. I really needed help at that point.
She got it. When she returned, her husband had her deprogrammed. Her marriage and the rest of her life now put back together. Linda says what happened to her could happen to anyone, and certainly many others have felt the powerful pull of Ramtha.
Stay steadfast. I will. I want to go where you are. You're going to. Sooner than you know.
And lately, those who want to be where Ramtha is have found a reason to do so. In Ramtha videos and in Ramtha newspapers, the mystic predicts a series of natural disasters will devastate much of America. Volcanoes and quakes, plagues and drought and tidal waves, and more.
In these days to come, one should leave that which is called the beaches and seek higher ground. It would be well advised, in the greatest of wisdom, to pack your belongings and go somewhere else.
Well, many of the true believers are taking that advice to heart. Now, Ramtha says that the Pacific Northwest will be safe from all those disasters, So in the past year or two, hundreds of people, upwards of 1,500 by one count, have suddenly left everything behind. Their families, their businesses, just left everything and moved to places like Northern California, Oregon, and here in Washington State. This is Cheryl McNaughton. She moved to Yelm, Washington, right near JZ Knight. After falling in with Ramtha, McNaughton divorced her multimillionaire husband, left her home in Hawaii, came here with her children and her new boyfriend.
Ramtha was a door. I walked through it. I changed my life. I am happy because of me. He gave me that experience.
But it's a bitter experience for many of those left behind. We heard stories from all over the country, like the East Coast, where there was the elderly man whose wife of 45 years got into Ramtha, and then last Thanksgiving suddenly cleaned out their bank account and moved to the Northwest. And we talked to the woman here in Los Angeles. Just last summer, her husband got a Ramtha videotape and started watching it over and over again.
He became obsessed with the idea that the world was going to end. He began giving away our furniture. We had just bought a house. He put the house up for foreclosure. He let his business go, and he moved up to an area near the Sequoias.
He finally came home just recently, but Tina's still shaken.
What is Ramtha doing to families like yours?
Tearing them apart. I don't know what she did to my husband, but he's not the same he was. You know, he's just not the same person he was a few months ago.
Those folks, you know, they point the finger at you. They blame you. They think you're bad news, that you've lured their loved ones away.
You know, but you know, what would you expect them to say? I'm so thankful she took my wife away, and it's all her fault. It could never be mine. You know, people don't want to take responsibility that if that person left, could it be because they weren't happy anymore?
To grasp what Knight says, it helps to look at what some of her followers think of as their Bible, the Ramtha White Book. It outlines a philosophy where reality is whatever you want it to be, where there's no right, no wrong, even murder is not wrong or evil. But JZ says it helps to believe in reincarnation.
If you only believe that you only are going to, you're born and you die, and there's no afterlife, murder is definitely wrong. If you believe in a continuation of life, that's a different story. In a divinity, if we're immortal and we're going to live again, then how could murder be a wrong?
The person who commits a murder, for instance, doesn't need to be punished by being put into prison. He's going to be punished because he's going to hate himself for eons of years, and he's going to live with that guilt and that remorse, and it will set his process of evolvement back for ages and ages.
McNaughton says Ramtha told her that in a previous life she was one of his children. JZ says Ramtha told her that she too was one of his daughters. But we decided to look at JZ's more recent past here in the oil town of Artesia, New Mexico, where she grew up as Judy Hampton. She was popular, voted prettiest girl by the other members of her high school class. One of her closest friends in school was Sandy Fallis. Sandy told us of a bizarre incident at a prayer meeting when Judy suddenly began speaking in a strange male voice, identifying herself as a demon named Demayas.
She couldn't breathe. She was holding her neck, and she was saying, "I can't breathe." At that point, this male's voice spoke out again. He said, "I possess this body and cannot have it. I have possessed it for many years."
Well, I have never, ever had anything like that happen. That's somebody else's truth. That's not my truth.
Didn't happen.
No, it didn't happen.
But if it did, it would seem to support a theory that Knight has and may have had another personality that comes out that she can't entirely control.
Some very powerful and deep force, even an alternate personality, is taking over the unconscious of the channeler.
So what is Ramtha? Merely a figment of JZ Knight's imagination or a genuine phenomenon? Well, if you listen to some of those who were there at the beginning in the late 70s, maybe it's a little bit of both. They include some of Knight's old friends, even her ex-husband. They'll tell you that in the beginning, Ramtha was real, something positive, something good. But those old friends say as the Ram grew more popular, JZ grew jealous, and somehow she began pushing the real spirit aside and started acting the part of Ramtha.
When I would look at JZ, she was like hungry. She was hungry for these things that money could buy.
Steven Bakker says greed is the motivation behind Ramtha. He was once Knight's advance man, traveled with her, arranged all her appearances. In Seattle, where he now lives, Bakker told us about a series of incidents that made him lose faith. He recalled a gathering in California in 1984 when JZ started slipping into and out of her Ramtha identity without bothering with a trance. There was a desert hike.
She was smoking at the time and would put down her cigarette, and she'd walk to the edge of a big boulder, and she would stand there and go like this and imitate Ramtha and holler down to the people to hurry up, and then she would come down and talk some more to us and smoke some more, and then she'd go up and do it again, urging them on. And that's when I really just died inside, because it was blatant.
But perhaps more blatant was Ramtha's involvement with JZ's horses. Her stable, Messiah Arabians, boasts such valuable animals as this mare, which Knight says is worth $1 million.
Thank you for being so gorgeous.
Apparently, Ramtha likes horses, too. Cheryl McNaughton told us that Ramtha advised her to buy this stallion from JZ Knight. She paid JZ $250,000. Knight, as Ramtha, advised many others to invest in some of her own high-priced horses. This offering of one of Knight's Messiah Arabians describes it as an investment personally designed by Ramtha.
Of course, if God says to you, do this, what are you going to say? No, or oh, I'll think about it. I mean, you just don't turn your back on that. And so I would just be besieged with people like shoving money at me so that they could, get in on this.
Many of the investments sour, prompting complaints. An investigation by the state of Washington brought a cease and desist order, which Knight voluntarily agreed to, and she's been paying back the unhappy investors.
In retrospect, are you sorry that you used the name of Ramtha in offerings like that one?
No, I'm not, because I think if a person is ever sorry about what they ever did, then they never learn and they never progress and go forward. People are entitled to say that I'm a fake, I'm a fraud, I'm a devil, I'm the Antichrist. I'm everything but doing something good for somebody. And it's okay if they say that, because, the thing that I've learned is that everyone is entitled to their own truth.
Truth, reality, in the world of Ramtha, they are whatever you want them to be. So go ahead and call this a cosmic con game if you want to. JZ Knight is going to keep right on enjoying her little slice of heaven, as long as the spirit moves her.
To that which is termed life. Forever, and ever, and ever. So be it.
Judge, she is highly visible now, but how many others are there out there like that? How widespread is this channeling phenomenon?
There are dozens and dozens of them. She is the best known, but there are many others. For example, Shirley MacLaine is now aligning herself with a channel named Kevin Ryerson, who claims he brings forth a 400-year-old spirit. Athena Pattengill, one of the women we spoke with in the story, she claims she's a channel. So it's a new phenomenon, and Dr. Carl Raschke, the cult expert we talked to, said that it's an outgrowth of the cult movement of the early 80s and of the 70s, that this is the new form of a cult, sort of a no-fault cult, because you don't see a wise man like Rajneesh, for example. It's the person bringing forth the spirit of a wise man. You can't see him, but he's there.
Thank you, Judd.